Okay, it is our great pleasure to have with us today my very old friend. We were going to school together in New York, Carol Colmenares, and we had our internship together at Sesame Street, where she stayed for 15 years and contributed to some award-winning programs. And those programs were awarded with Emmy and Grammy Awards. And her specialization is varied. It is from children's content, audiovisual content, to documentaries, and most recently to podcasts. She's into podcasts now. And also we have with us the associate professor of this New School University, film director and documentarian, Neida Martinez. Neida, thank you so much for, she's volunteering to this meeting. Thank you so much for your willingness to share your experience. She's working at a new school, but also she's a very active filmmaker, basically documentarian, and I would say activist. I have sent you her bio. So why don't I let our guests to speak. So Carol, floor is yours.
Thank you.
Some of my old students as well. Nicoleta, welcome. Okay, Carol.
Thank you, everybody. And what is it, Kalinita?
Kalispera.
Kalispera. Thank you for having us. Thank you. Greetings, everybody. And thank you for letting us share a little bit of our experience. As Lena said, I come from the world of children's media and scripted television. I worked for Sesame Street for a number of years, and then I went and founded my own production and post-production company. And in recent years, I have poured myself into documentary production and podcast production. My role has been as a creative producer, as a line producer, as an executive producer, and as an executive producer of this hybrid new documentary forms that are taking place, of this hybrid new podcasts that are taking place, that are not necessarily investigative journalism or interviews, but are rather a hybrid between scripted and a documentary of some sort. So in my production company, I am a producer. I like to say that I am a projectologist, which is I find projects and I try to find where they would fit or where is the best way to make them happen, what resources are needed for the project, and where it could live and have a life of its own, where it could have an impact. And my partner is an Emmy Award-winning editor. And together, this combination allows us to take on a variety of projects, from commercials to children's shows, to documentaries, to anything under the sun. So, and Lena tells me that there are a few editors in this meeting, editors in the house or other roles. I would love to know, before we continue, to know, like, what are some of the things that you do? Are you editors? Are you producers? Are you like, what are you interested in? Documentary camera people, or if you could write in the chat what so we can get a sense of who you are.
We have two editors in our class. Okay, let me see if they're here.
Producers. writers, just so that we know a little bit more about you.
More of them are already working in the field, but I think they're shy now. None of them wants to talk.
Don't be shy. I'm in a little screen.
Andreas Morgan is an expert in technology. He's always my helper in in the physical classes. And if I'm not mistaken, Andreas is also editing and doing a little bit of everything. Andreas, why don't you present yourself?
Hi, hello. Actually, I'm on the road, so it's kind of impossible for me to talk right now. Will be bothering for you too.
Okay.
Okay.
So in like 10 minutes, I will be at home, so it will be better to make the introduction there.
Okay. Okay. So,
Perfect.
but basically, Carol, we have an average age of 30 to 35 years old. They all work, and you know, Nicoletta, for instance, has graduated 3 years ago, and now she's writing and directing for documentaries, also helping her fellow participants and peers to promote their work. They have formed, a group of friends, which I know you're going to talk about working with friends. So why don't you start with that, Carol?
Okay. So I'd like to say that I'd like to start with the fact that everyone that goes into filmmaking, film production, film writing, documentary production, documentary writing, does it because there is a need to express themselves through this medium in an artistic way. So never underestimate that. Anyone that comes to work with you, always consider that they join this profession or join this field because there is a need to have an artistic expression. And I'll talk more about that. So focusing on documentary, particularly, the good news is that, the documentary genre has exploded. All the streaming services now have a section dedicated to documentaries, from HBO to Hulu to Netflix. They all have a category for documentaries, which is amazing. And this, of course, creates more opportunities for us documentarians, and it also creates more competition. So it's not one without the other. And if you do a quick search of like the top 10 documentaries of the last decade, you'll see that the genre is very varied. It has everything from biographies to investigative journalism like Citizen4, to verite like Honeyland. And then there are hybrids like The Mole Agent. I don't know if you guys got to see it, but it is a Chilean film in which you're constantly questioning yourself whether this is staged or is this not pure documentary. So The Mole Agent is a Chilean film that I think came out 2 years ago, about a senior citizen that went into a senior house as an investigator. He was the mole. So, and then this year there is Flee, Flee, which is a documentary, a Danish documentary that was selected for entry to the Academy Awards for Best International Feature Film, Best Documentary Feature, and Best Animated Feature, making it the only one, the first film to be nominated in all those three categories. I would like to show you a little bit of that one, of Flee, if I may. just the trailer, because I do think it's a good example of how the documentary genre has expanded. Our notion of documentary has expanded. So how do I?
I've made you co-host.
So you made me co-host, so bear with me.
Okay.
Give me 1 second. Okay, so share screen.
Mhm.
Can you all hear?
Yeah. Yeah, better now.
Har du nogensinde fortalt din livshistorie før? Nej. Vi skal ud. Det er nu. Dårligt samvittighed, at min bror han bliver tilbage. Vi flygtede med menneskesmugleren. Det værste mennesker i mit liv. Har du fortalt Kasper nogle af de her historier overhovedet? Nej. Det tager tid at stå det på folk. Det går rundt. Tænk tilbage. Så det er min fortid, og det er ikke flygtet for det. Jeg har heller ikke lyst. Jeg kan mærke, at der skal ske noget. Her starter jo min historie.
Okay.
Okay, you want to tell us what this documentary is about and what format has it used to tell the story?
So as you, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So as you saw, this is a fully animated feature-length documentary. It is the story of this Afghani refugee who lives in Denmark, and he's also gay, and it is his story about his time in Afghanistan during the war. And when you see the documentary, you saw a little bit of it in the trailer, but when you see the documentary, there's a lot of archival footage, there's a lot of photography, personal photography, and he retells his own personal story through the animation, through the use of this historical footage and music. It is, if you can watch it, it's an amazing film. So I wanted to start with that because this is one of the things that I have been exploring myself in the documentary world. And I'm just going to show you 2 minutes of a recent work that I've completed. It is a short documentary about 2 cows that escaped the slaughterhouse. And so I will show you a little bit of that. Obviously is nowhere near, you get to see the premiere of it. We're still working on it, but
is it in post?
It's in post. It is, I just want to show you the first like 2 minutes because we also incorporated, the filmmaker wanted to incorporate animation into her documentary. So she had the story, she had the character, and we were trying to figure out what would be the best way to incorporate animation with very limited resources. So I'm just going to show you just a little bit of it. Give me 1 second again. I had it here. Can you see?
Mhm.
So
Mike Jr., the way it was told to me, he escaped from a slaughterhouse. I was sitting home watching news, and all of a sudden, here goes a cow. Here in New Jersey, 800-pound cow or so running across the television screen. And I was like, wow. Escaped this slaughterhouse, ran down the street, ran into a river, swam across the river. Police tried to corral him a little bit, chasing down the road.
This week, a cow was seen running in the streets of Paterson, New Jersey after escaping from a local slaughterhouse. He gave animal control quite a fight.
Police were hitting him with their cars and trying to knock him down, and they actually caught him by pinning him against a fire hydrant. We have a trailer that we had made for rescuing animals. I couldn't help myself, and I got anxious and drove down to the slaughterhouse. They work for me. They're like a tool. I use them like a tool, you know. I'm not your stereotypical vegan, you know. I look like I ate a vegan. And I'm a truck driver, you know, and I don't hang around in my normal life with too many vegans. I don't know that many. So this is a conversation starter. People will say, what's up with that stupid tattoo? And then I can just ruin their day, mostly, you know. The owner of the slaughterhouse had said in front of some news people who asked him, yeah, I might let him live on a farm somewhere because of his big spirit or whatever. When I got out of that truck at the slaughterhouse, I said, hi, I'm Mike from the Woodstock Farm Animal Sanctuary. Yeah, I saw that little cow on TV, and I'm here to take him home with me. And he said, what do you mean? I said, what happens a month from now when I find out he didn't live his life out on a farm somewhere, and I tell everyone? So he said to me, do you want him? I said, heck yeah, I want him. So he said, okay, you can have him.
So what
Okay.
happened to the cow eventually?
So that gives an idea of some of the things that that I'm working on. Some of the things that I'm working on, trying to incorporate animation and found footage and news footage to make a fuller piece. So the other one that I'm working on is also an animation. It's also a hybrid. We went ahead and we did first the interview on video, And then the animator, the filmmaker I'm working with, she decided to do an animation. It's a 1-minute animation. Maybe if we have time at the end, I can show you, I can share that one with you, or I'll share it in the link for you to watch it. That one received seed money from Still I Rise Films. And we're in the process of expanding from 1 minute to a 10 to 12-minute film around the issue of climate justice. And it's an 11-year-old Colombian kid who is very active in climate justice. And I'll share the link later on because the 1 minute is published. Okay, so let me go back to my notes. So I would like to focus the rest of my time, my conversation, because I do want Neida to have some time to talk about her very important film, Decade of Fire. But I would like to focus my discussion about 3 topics today. The importance of team, the importance of financing and budgeting correctly from the beginning, and scheduling. So, as you know, most documentary makers, most filmmakers start as a team of 1. And even though that's very good as a proof of concept and to begin to start putting things together, it ends up limiting your opportunities to grow. Now, the natural tendency is to team up with your friends, right? Because who else is gonna stand to work without payment and to work these very long hours if they're not your friends? And my plea to you today is resist the urge to work with friends. You can become friends later, but at the beginning, if you want to conserve that friendship, resist the urge to work with friends. But if you do have to work with friends, my very big advice is to have the difficult conversations from the beginning. Money makes people funny, and you need to have ways of entering into projects, and you need to have ways of exiting the project. And it's better to have these conversations right up front. It's better to know what your expectations are. It's different what your expectations are of your friends, and it's different what your expectations are of your coworker, of your colleague, of the person that is going to go on this journey with you, making this film, this documentary, which in many cases can take many, many years. So have those difficult conversations at the beginning. How are you entering the process? What are their expectations? What are your expectations? What happens? Think of the worst case scenario. What happens if it's not working? What happens if, you know, the person needs to take on other jobs because they simply cannot be doing that? Have those conversations. I want to bring an example. I recently was asked to mediate between 2 friends that were childhood friends since they were 9 years old. They did a documentary together about a very important Colombian artist, and the artist did not like the documentary. Now, these are friends that had been friends for over 30 years. These are women in their 40s, and they did this documentary together. And the artist did not like the documentary and vetoed the documentary. And so the friendship between these 2 friends just simply split apart. They're not talking to each other. They have involved lawyers. They do not have a contract between each other because, of course, they were friends. Why would you have a contract between each other? You do need to have contracts between each other. You have to. It's very, very important. Even if it's a term sheet, what we call a term sheet, where we say, this is what I would expect you to do. These are your roles. And this is in case this doesn't happen, this is how we would split. If the project doesn't happen, then this is how we would split our resources. So just so that there's clarity and transparency in the whole process. Of course, no one can predict the future. But like I said before, it's a good exercise to think of a worst case scenario. What if we end up investing you know, and sometimes it's not even investing money, it's investing time, so that you have to be conscious of those things, right? Because I might have $1,000 to put up front, but you have, you know, the 40 hours a week to put up front. So all of those things need to be considered. Okay, I'm not giving money to the project, but I'm giving you my time, and that is valuable, that has a value. Attach those values to it. And so this is not to discourage you from working on teams, because teams can really push you to the next level. So that's not to discourage anybody from working with teams or working with friends. Just be very clear. It's also important to find good team members that are not necessarily your friends, because they can push your project forward. And this brings me to a great point about financing and budget. A good producer, a seasoned producer, can help budget your documentary right from the start. No one raises money all at once. Not one project raises, you know, if your project is $300,000, you don't get $300,000 all at once. The example that I was just giving you, we raised $5,000 for the animation, and now we're in the process of raising the next $25,000. And we'll probably get, you know, 2,000 here, 10,000 there, you know, little by little until you get to your overall budget. But the more experienced the producers are, the more they can help you crafting the appropriate language for the proposals, or even thinking outside the box of where they can go, where you can go, where you can apply, what doors can you knock on to get your funding. And Neda and I write really well together. We are colleagues. We are colleagues on a couple of projects. A filmmaker brought us together, and it's been the best relationship that filmmaker could have, the best thing she could have done for us, because we really work well together. So we became friends after the fact. We weren't friends to begin with, but we have become very good friends. And even though we write really well together, we still sometimes bring in a grant writer to help us craft the language and push the projects forward, move the needle in a different direction. We also have done the exercise of having a different person outside of our team to look at our budget and advise on our budget. It's illuminating, because sometimes you're so caught up in the numbers, and I can be the camera person, and I can edit, and I can also do the sound. And as filmmakers, and especially as film students, we are taught to do everything. And so often when we do our budgets, we're thinking, oh, well, I can forego of that because I can do it. And so it's important to have someone outside of your team look at your budget, so that they can tell you, well, if this was the real world, you would need to allow this much money for your camera person, or this much money for your editing person, or this much money for music. Music is something that people do not consider. They think, oh, I'll take care of it later. And I recently heard somebody say, start with 50,000 with your budget in music. Start with 50,000, even if you don't think you're going to use any music. So usually we're working with 3 different budgets. The ideal budget, which is like a robust, good budget, professional standards, industry standards. One that is a do-it-yourself budget, which is like bare bones, and we're going to do everything with friends. And another one that is a medium budget. And I would say that more often than not, you can raise to the medium, you can raise the money for the medium budget. So finances is an area that I'm still learning a lot myself. The past 3-4 years, I have been working very closely with NADA in finding the resources, the grant, the institutions. There's ITVS, and there's international institutions that will support independent films, independent documentaries. And that brings me to scheduling. Find somebody in your team that is very organized. If this is not you as a filmmaker, find somebody in your team that is. Someone needs to keep track of when the grants open and when the grants close, because you do need to work on them. And this will have a bigger impact once your film is done, and Neda will speak more to it, and will speak more to, you know, the whole impact and finding your festivals and finding where and how to do that follow up once your film is done. But at this pre-production stage, it's important to have somebody in your team that is very organized about your dates of when the grants open, when the grants close, so that you don't miss anything. Also, I just wanted to mention that as a team, you need to have constant communication. Neda and I meet once a week to talk about all of our projects, even if there's nothing happening, even if it's a catch up once a week, we catch up and we say, what grants are there open? What do we need to work on? If there's, you know, if we have some downtime, then we catch up on, okay, what is the creative aspect that we can work on? So it's never a waste of time to schedule and set aside that time. We usually give ourselves 2 hours, but depending on where you are on your film, it's great to have that time set aside for your schedule. I want to give you a few resources that I will put in the chat, especially now with the virtual world. They have so many conferences and so many things that you can go to virtually. Like Women Make Movies right now has a whole series of webinars about impact campaign and producing your pitch deck and budgeting correctly. The Gotham, which used to be the IFP, also has some webinars on budgeting, which are very good. And the Documentary Producers Alliance, the DPA, is a great place to go for resources. This goes back to financing, and it goes back to working with your friends. Determine that type of things. You know, if we get $50,000, do you get 10%? Do you get 5%? How is that distribution made among producers, among friends? So that's, let me just, where's my chat? Where's my chat? Oh, here. I'm just gonna copy here in the chat some of the resources so that you can look at them in your own time. And I think I'm right on time to start. I think, do we have a break or do we go to Neda, Lenny?
Okay, I would say that we have a break in 10 minutes, but if there are questions right now for Carol, please don't hesitate and ask them. We have basically talked in this class about European funding system, and especially focusing on development. How do you finance development? And also we have talked about my students' thesis. There are going to be short documentary films. Unfortunately, the university system only gives them a period of like 6 months to make their documentaries, which is not a lot. I would say it is a very limited time, but my advice is always to start with something, and then if they like the idea, then develop it further, produce it further, do something with those ideas, and you know, elaborate on them and make them probably longer. And then at the point that they feel satisfied of what they have created, start looking for festivals, markets, co-production markets, and fora, and try to apart from the thing that they are obliged to hand in to the university and, finish their graduate degree and receive their MAs, don't abandon the idea and the production of the idea and take it some steps further if they believe that the idea is worth taking it further. So also we have talked a lot about story development, project development, financing of development stage and production stage, and also marketing strategies incorporated from early development stage. So based on that, their final papers will be a media development application. Media is the European funding program for the funding of development stage. Then the national film centers that we have in Europe are funding the production stage, but then media comes in again, funding everything after the ending of post, meaning distribution and going to international film festivals and markets, so that there is no overlapping of funding in Europe. So media is funding everything until the first day of principal photography and after the last day of post-production, meaning completing project. They can fund completing project, and they can also fund distributors to give them, to offer motives to take their projects in their roster, and sales agents and TV stations. There is also a program after the finished project is over called TV broadcasting, which also means streaming and digital platforms and everything. So, they can also use the service. The only thing is that they essentially need a production company to be the leader, to take their project, to believe in their project. And in order to convince a production, an independent production company, you need to have a decent project to show. And that's what we are working on. And I have uploaded, guys, a pitch deck sample, an example of how to make pitch decks for B2B and B2C, because this is really important. And at this point, I would say if you have any questions for Carol and hybrid documentaries, because there seems to be a tendency there, incorporating animation into documentaries, apart for the old method, which was reenactment. And probably you don't want to do that anymore, or in case you don't have enough archival material, or you don't have access to archival material, or if you want to narrate your own personal story, like in Flea, for instance, you can always use alternative forms of storytelling to complete the narrative and create an interesting way of narrating, an attractive way of narrating your project. So what Carol showed us with animation is certainly a very modern approach, a very up-to-date, and as I have many times told you, different formats, different genres can be integrated as long as they serve a cinematic story to be told. So don't hesitate. Don't be stuck in traditional forms, and be bold and try to incorporate new elements, even footage from your mobile phones or whatever you can think of. Everything is acceptable today. Right,
So
Carol?
I think the boundaries are being pushed, and people are trying to see where this format takes them. So definitely, I would add to your students that are working on a thesis project to not take it lightly and try to produce the best, even if it's 5 minutes, 5 to 10 minutes. I know at the new school, where there is a certificate in documentary, the students take it very seriously. And some of those documentaries have made it into festivals, into Doc NYC, and I'm forgetting right now. I'm forgetting right now a very famous director that started at the new school with a very small piece that was verite and was filming. So don't take it lightly. Really explore. Take the opportunity during your thesis to explore these topics and these themes and make the best piece, the best solid piece that you can make. Somebody said, the question, as a director, do I need to know the basics of animation if I want to direct a hybrid animated documentary? It helps if you know the basics of animation, but if you have the idea, and I think it's more important to know how to articulate what you want than to know the animation. You need to know what the boundaries are, what budget you have, but what you need to know is how to explain to somebody who does know animation, what is it that you want. I think that's more important. Reality Hunger, a manifesto, is a non-fiction book by American writer David Shields. Is a comment from, yes, animation is expensive and time consuming. So yes, definitely. But that is something that might be interesting if you do know an animator and you're both interested in the same topic. Then that would be a good. There are many animation students that are trying also to see where they can fit in. So this is a good alliance where you can work on your documentary and maybe an animation student can help you with those animated parts or that animation parts. All right, I think that's it.
Okay, then let's take a 10-minute break and be back at our time 7:10. New York time 12:10 with Neda. Okay, please take a minute. I have sent you Neda's bio. Please take a minute to read it in your university's accounts today, and see you 10 minutes. Okay. Okay,
So-
start with an example of a pitch deck.
So
Well, this is an example of a one-pager.
exactly. So we were invited in a previous project, we were invited to only in New York with another project. And we brought, aside from our materials, which were basically business cards, we brought a one pager. And that proved to be a good success because, a great success, because people can see everything. They can have all the information they need in this one page that you can give away. So we created this one with the new project that we're working on, which is called Bartolo. And
This is like a postcard, Carol, or a bigger size?
it's a regular 8.5 by 11 paper, like yep,
A4?
a full paper, full page.
Okay.
But it could be a
Okay,
postcard.
gracias.
It could be a postcard as well, especially if you're going to conventions, meetings, where there are going to be people that you need to have a pitch, where you need to tell quickly what your project is about. That you should always memorize, like your 3 lines that quickly tell what your project is about. Bartolo. So you see, we picked a picture, a feature documentary by Leandro Fabrici Rios, who is the filmmaker in Puerto Rico. Here we put in the log line, what it is, tucked in the remote coffee growing mountainside of Lares, Puerto Rico. Bartolo follows an isolated community of 12 unhoused families who sees a chance for a new beginning. Hard hit by the legacies of Spanish and US colonialism, systemic government neglect, and climate change, they transform an abandoned school building to address their most pressing need, shelter. Despite communal ties dating back generations, can this mutual aid project survive competing individual needs and the formidable will of an outside activist? So it gives you a quick glimpse as to what the documentary is about. On the way we organized it, we had all of the information for the director, the producer, the format, the length, the budget. This budget has increased because we have done our due diligence and we have asked, we've been working on it 3 years now, Neda, on this documentary. 3 years, and previously the filmmaker had been working on it at least 2 more years. So it's been 5 years in the
Have you shot
making.
the parts already?
We already have some funds. We've already raised, this is more, we've raised close to 350, I would
300.
say.
About 300, over a little over 300,000.
We have raised.
Mhm.
And these are some of the organizations that have supported with funds.
Mhm.
So with
Philanthropic.
funds and labs. Labs
And
are
then-
very important. When you're putting,
Sundance.
yep. Sundance did an Uprise grant. It was small, but it's enough to put your name in there. It's enough to put your logo in there. So that's something that you should know. And we wanted to show you like the first 2 minutes of the trailer. So that you get a sense of what we're doing. Just get to it. Okay. So I'm not that familiar with Zoom, so I keep losing the place for share screen. Got it. Okay, so this scene selects that I'm about to share, these were done for an application for ITVS. Let me just make sure that you get the sound. Sorry, let me start it again.
Okay.
No.
Can you hear it?
No.
No.
No. And the bottom, it says share sound.
Can you not hear it? Well,
When
there's
you,
no,
when you go back under the share, there's share sound, a little tiny. Mhm. When you're in the screen share modality, setting it up, it says share sound. No se oye. No. No sound.
let me try again. Can you not hear it? Can you not hear
No.
the sound on the video?
No.
Okay. Can you hear now?
Let me try, make me co-host.
Okay.
Mhm.
I've made you co-host, Nada.
Okay, I have it. Okay. So just to set it up, this is in Puerto Rico, like Carol said, post-Hurricane Maria. It's a remote community high up in the mountains, and they live caught between the legacies of the Spanish colonialism and the US neoliberalism. So we're just going to introduce you to the place and show you about the first minute and a half or two.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Estoy cansado ya de sacar tierra con la pala de corte. ¿Dónde está? Toma, esta que yo estoy picando, tú la sacas. Entonces yo me voy allá. Deja que yo pique aquí.
Déjame caminar, ni para allá ni para acá. Más material que yo quiero, chulo. Bien.
Somos pobres, tenemos para comprar un terreno. Algo tenemos que hacer. Y esta estructura aquí es nueva, se estaba perdiendo. Nadie hace nada, nadie la recortaba, estaba perdida. Nosotros la cogimos.
Pues más o menos con esa referencia de esa piedra, que son los 12 pies, que sería hacia acá. Y entonces lo que habría que hacer es con el pico, nivelar esto acá,
Lo que te digo.
limpiar todo esto. Entonces, esta sería la jaula. Porque hay que picotear ahí y picotear acá para nivelarlo, para entonces poder empezar a ponerlo. Sí. Porque está chévere también de que tengan ese charco ahí con agua, porque eso es lo que a ellos les gusta.
Eso es lo que le gusta a ellos.
Mira, bendito, hay que echarle, están esmerados. Pues ya está.
Según las leyes de Puerto Rico, cuando tú te ocupas un lugar, a ti te tienen que desahuciar. Hay que llevarnos al tribunal.
Sí.
O sea, que eso es un proceso y hay menores y son 12 familias. O sea,
Pero que ellos pueden hacer, ¿tú me entiendes? Que no tienen obstáculos para hacerlo.
ellos pueden hacer chanchullo, pero ya nosotros tenemos algo que no lo tiene nadie. Nosotros tenemos un reconocimiento de gente que no son políticos que nos apoyan. Nosotros tenemos en los medios de comunicación, que no lo hemos utilizado todavía, que nos han sacado un artículo aquí y una cosita allá. Pero este proyecto va a ser un modelo de qué se pueden hacer en las escuelas en Puerto Rico.
So that's just to give you a sense of place. It's largely, like I said, an agricultural community. An agricultural community high up in the mountains. And that sets us up for the case study on Decade of Fire, because even though this is in the present day of Puerto Rico, in the mid-century, 1950s and early 1960s, nearly 1 million Puerto Ricans had to migrate from the countryside to the city and then into the United States, because the plan was between the governor of the time in the island and the United States administration was required to have an exodus of like nearly 1 million people at the minimum, because in the island they were reconfiguring the economy from agriculture to industrialization and then to mono-agriculture. And I think the Greek having suffered your economic crisis, you understand, how government impacts the daily lives of working people in a very austere and powerful way. It disrupts the daily life of the community. So I guess with that, since Carol mentioned budgets, I do want to show you a scan of the television version of the budget for Decade of Fire. A Decade of Fire was a 90-minute film and it's festival run, but for public television, we got additional support to make it into 1 television hour. So I will show you the budget for that quickly, just so that you can see the categories and such. We'll do that. So just for your educational purposes, I wanted to show you a little bit about how I'm sure that the budgets are not that different in your country and ours, but essentially in the first section, we have the resources or the income. The income is not really income. The income is really the philanthropic resources and some private donations, and also some of the producers' cash. So for the television version of Decade of Fire, it was about 800, getting 700,000. Bartolo, we're also expecting to be around an $800,000 production. In terms of expenses, I'm sure you have all covered with Lena, research, development, as Carol was saying, sometimes you hire consultants, such as a grant writer to move the project forward. In this case, we also worked with an additional writer who was a playwright to work with our principal protagonist in creating emotion and narration for the film. Here are some of the categories of other rights that you might want to look at as you are developing your film, your composer, your footage, your music, your photography, etc. Here's some of your basic crew, your DP, your assistant camera, your editors, your illustrators. We did have a little bit of animation and illustration in the film. And then also with your line producer and as you're planning shoots, you want to be mindful about the mileage, the transportation costs and meals locally for your day shoots. And then there's equipment, as you well know, tape, stock, camera rental, lightings. And then some of your post-production fees, as Carol was alluding to, the edits, the DVD hard drives, the color correction, tape stock, etc. In the United States, I'm sure also in your country too, we have to have insurance for the film property, both general liability insurance, errors and omissions insurance is for the broadcast TV. That is in terms of the content and the language that you are putting forth in your film, especially if it's facts. No one wants a lawsuit because a protagonist may have said something incorrectly. And we also have to provide some fees sometimes for the workers' compensation and then basic office administrative stuff, as you know. And in terms of the public television broadcast in the United States, these are some required fees that we have to cover. And then just a summation of the above the line and the below the line. And so as Lena was saying, yeah, I am an educator, cultural consultant and activist. And before that, I was a longtime cultural worker in the museum and theater space. Also worked in impact investing. But before kind of making this transition into independent documentary producing and now teaching, I did have the benefit of working with public television in the United States with the most, with the first and the most respected destination for nonfiction film, which is POV on public television. And so I kind of bring that full life of education and working knowledge to the table as I work on my projects with my teams. So now I want to introduce you to the film To Decade of Fire, which having introduced you a little bit to the agricultural economy, kind of that look, then we come into New York City in the mid-centuries with this shift in policy. And maybe some of you have heard about the Bronx. It's the birthplace of hip hop. It's the cradle of Latin music that we call salsa. But it's also in the public imagination a very dangerous place, which is not true. It's only dangerous because the people in the community look like me. So I hope you don't think I'm dangerous, but that's the reputation that we have. It's a wrongful depiction, but it is endemic of otherizing, of blaming the victim and of otherizing populations, racist, discriminatory views of persons that do not look like you. So in Decade of Fire, the region, which is almost like a state or a small country, because New York is huge, literally the trauma was such that for 10 years, the borough burned and the community was blamed, wrongly blamed. So now I would like to show you the trailer of Decade of Fire, and then I'll go into the...
We grew up in rubble. We grew up with burnt out decay all over us. The South Bronx was burning down around us, and nobody seemed to know why.
Everything south of the Cross Bronx Expressway, they just let it burn, and nobody gave a damn.
And all of a sudden, neighborhoods just went whoosh, gone.
Nobody's aware of the fact that we got a city dump right here in the backyard.
How could city government allow this to happen? Who was in charge? Why? The story we were told, the story the whole world was told, was that the fires were somehow our fault.
But we didn't burn the Bronx. We were the ones who saved it.
said, no, wait a minute. I have to make my move right now.
The reason we're trying to do all these things is to show an example to the rest of the people in the neighborhood that if you just try, you could make a lot better neighborhood.
If no one else wants to fight, we'll fight. And I'm sure that I could get all the women in the Bronx to go out there and fight.
The federal government can come in and wave a wand and do this.
We try to get money from the city to renovate a building. Got red tape, 2-3 years maybe. 2-3 years, there might not be a Kelly Street.
This story is not just about the Bronx. There are places like this in every major city in America. Places that everyone has given up on, except for us. We came from this so-called terrible place, but we would never leave it behind.
Very powerful.
Oh, thank you, Elena. Are there any comments? Have any of the students ever heard of the Bronx?
Do you even know what Bronx is?
The Bronx is a large section of New York City. The New York City is like your hand. It has 5 boroughs. Yeah. So it's a rather large, wait, hold on a second. Ay, espérate. Okay. So
I would add to your spiel that the importance of a trailer, right? It's
right.
Every time
so
I see it, every time I see it, it still moves me again. And that's what you want to create for your films, is you want to select that kind of powerful. I mean, Lena's first comment was so powerful, and that is part of your artistry as in the trailer.
And so you see how different that was from the work sample. So the work sample that we showed you from Bartolo is a work sample to introduce you to the location, to the subject, to some of the people, but it does not really summarize the narrative. But a work sample proves access to story, access to character, because typically that is what they are investing in your access, because your point of view, your relationship, it is really because of you that you are the only person and the best person to tell the story that you are telling. So thank you for that on the trailer. And so I'll kind of walk through the presentation a little bit. I'm sorry, the slides, I can't make them too big on my computer. So essentially, as the film says, and you can certainly appreciate it, living where you live, that in what is the so-called richest nation of the world, you have children of color growing up in an environment that looks like a war zone. And the media wrongly blamed the Black and Puerto Rican population. So our mission with this film was to reclaim our narrative, reclaim our history, and to shift the understandings of these stories, and to work in tandem and support linking up this film to the organizers of today, supporting the contemporary social justice and housing justice movement. As I alluded to at the top, the trauma was intense. Can you imagine, for 10 years, 80% of your housing in your community burns down, your community is blamed. The average of the fires was 30 to 40 a night. That's a lot of community trauma. And even though you probably all can appreciate that the United States has a narrative, but there are also multiple points of view in telling a story and having lived through a history. And so as we all know, oftentimes the victor tells the history, but sometimes we also have to tell our side of the story in this history. And so that the United States has had in law inscribed racist and discriminatory policies, right? We know, especially coming from a tradition like Greece, that the person who controls the narrative controls the history. So as filmmakers of color, we have been trying to really advocate for ourselves. because these damaging stereotypes persist. As we know, media is an important tool because it holds a lot of power in influencing the ideas that people carry about people, about other people. And so that in the United States, for example, and in many places of the world, it's a tool for racialized colonial power and the promotion of continued white supremacist dominance. So in the mid-century, you know, this film, these fires took place over 50 years ago. It was at the height of the civil rights movement. You've probably all heard about like Dr. Martin Luther King and the Workers' Coalition. And so many of the vanguard groups like the Black Panthers and the Puerto Rican group Young Lords were really looking to the global South, the, how do you say, the Cinema Verite movements of Latin America and others. And so that 40, 50 years later, again, there's this conversation in the United States around why is the field so white? And, you know, sometimes the people with the most marginalized have to push the hardest for the equity of all. And so that we have been advocating, again, to revisit these foundational values of trust, consent, accountability, and respect and dignity for the communities that we are presenting, because oftentimes the challenge and the beauty with documentary is that we're documenting, but we have to have an ethic, right? And fundamentally we have to be cognizant of our positions of power. And we know that we cannot rely on the tools of our oppressor to create change. And so this film lifts the stories of the unsung heroes that went into those buildings with their hands, building community and saved their community. And today in the United States, like in many of the major cities across the globe, with the neoliberalism and these money-making machines, like Uber and such. So there's a housing crisis in New York City and in the country. And what we try to do in terms of our process as filmmakers, we worked in community. The film took 10 years to make. I was invited about the 5th year into the process because the culture was not ready to receive this film. People didn't want to talk about it. The comments were negative, like, why do you want to bring this history back to light? We shouldn't be talking about this. But these are people's real lives. And so part of our ethic as a filmmaking team was to honor the community organizing process. So this is just a quote from one of the lead organizers who, after the financial crisis and during the pandemic, were able to ensure that people that were being wrongfully evicted from their homes had legal recourse. And so that was a huge win for, again, the victims on the other side of the policy. Our film's tagline is about commitment, about staying, fighting, and building. We wanted to make policy accessible. Again, I don't know if you know, in the United States, they are banning books. They're trying to limit knowledge. And so, but we feel that it's, it's just our right and our role as artists to tell the truth from the lived experiences of the people. And so, in addition to that, we wanted to confront the policies that perpetuate inequality and unfair housing practices today. And so in terms of the impact that Carol was alluding to at the top of their talk, we created a set of ancillary educational materials. We created a curriculum in consultation and in partnership with school teachers from the South Bronx, a curriculum that can be used with students of any age, free online. Of course, a film is only a finite, 60-minute, 90-minute story. And so in some cases where we wanted to dig deeper, we created, again, some free modules. One, teaching people how to defend your block, how to defend your community, how to organize. It was part of our commitment in terms of the filmmaking process to mirror the ethos of social justice and community organizing of the people, of the stories that we were lifting. This is one of the press quotes, which the film, you have to have faith. You need a lot of, it's a rigorous process, and it's a challenging process to raise money, especially from competitive philanthropic funds. But each film has its time and its team, as Carol and I learned at one of the PGA meetings about 2 or 3 years ago. And we feel that our film not only won the audience award in the PBS public television broadcast, but for an outlet such as RogerEbert.com, Roger Ebert, one of the most notable and fair film critics in the country, for one of his writers to say that our film succeeds as one of the best explanations in recent cinema of what systemic racism means, just couldn't be grander. Here, I'll share, I can share this deck with you so that you can look at the trailers and links later. Here embedded is the how module, like teaching people how to organize. Also, what is very rare is that we are a filmmaking team of 4 women, 2 Latina women and 2 allies, which is very rare, especially for women of color to helm a project of this nature. And how we advanced our goals, we defined success for ourselves. We never really expected this film to be commercially successful. Our main goal was to ensure that we put this film in the hands of the community organizers fighting on the side of human rights and housing justice today. So everything else that we garnered was beautiful, but we did not allow the commercial pressures to invade our process. And at the end of the day, as kind of filmmakers, we decoded, like we said at the top, we decoded what these fires meant to our population. And at the end of the day, what's most important is that because of where we come from, we do not see ourselves as individuals. We see ourselves as a part of a collective. And with that, I'm open to any questions. Do you have any questions? Or do you want me to highlight something?
Well, that was really powerful, and its purpose was activistic, I would say. And did it reach your goals as filmmakers?
Oh, yeah. Oh my God, in a major way. The most progressive politicians of the day, like Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, are celebrating the film. The film is opening forums around housing justice all over the world. We recently opened the Rosa Luxemburg discussion around housing justice in Berlin recently. We are consistently teaching this film now in universities and communities across the country. So this film has really been successful in connecting with the heart of people.
Yeah, yeah. And making, suggesting a change in the world, in our world, which is very, very important. I mean, I've been telling my students that, in my opinion, good documentaries either take lots of time or lots of risk or both of them. Yeah. And I guess this documentary took lots of risk from your side, guys, right?
Oh yeah, because we were going because now we see in the world, how powerful these conservative right regimes are. And so, while we do enjoy in the United States the ability to express ourselves, there is still a lot of social control. And there's still a lot of aggressive actions being taken to control voice and power, especially from the people that are the most humble, but that are fighting for their right to live a dignified life.
So I guess this kind of documentaries eventually become part of the human history. I mean, reference points in the human history.
Absolutely. Right? Absolutely. And especially, I feel as a Puerto Rican woman, we have a moral authority and a duty to shout the hypocrisy and the injustice of the United States colonialism and neoliberalism. Anna?
Well, those things don't only exist in the United States.
Well, that's why I'm sharing,
all over the world, but I know the US society and culture is really too conservative, more conservative than the European one. We are, I guess, more open to diversity, inclusion, and especially the recent years, the European Commission has voted for, and the European Parliament has voted for laws to protect and encourage diversity, inclusion, gender balance, all this stuff, racial differences and integration. So it is the new trend, I would say, in the audiovisual industry, along with greening and sustainability, diversion, inclusion. Those are the new words and the new values that we are asked to be serving through the audiovisual works and as the whole industry. Including festivals, markets that should be including this kind of works. And I think that the last 10 years, also gender balance has changed. And this is a good sign. I mean, 10 years ago, you wouldn't dare to say that now, in Europe, I was saying to my students that in the most recent Berlinale International Film Festival edition, a part of it happened online. It had, now all events have a hybrid form. So in the online events and talks and everything, you had your name and then in parentheses, either she/her or he/him or they/them. I mean, non-binary is accepted. I believe that the 50-50 gender balance is already obsolete, and we're going towards, a more free approach and a more inclusive approach towards all kinds of genders. And this is very optimistic, I think, in our society, because 10 years ago, I remember being the documentary coordinator, the coordinator of the Thessaloniki Documentary Festival. And, we were like daring to show this kind of films, like promoting gender balance issues, and you're born something, but you feel something else. And then, how these kids, these children and these families cope with this then problem. But now being acceptable is the first step, and it's a step, definitely, because things we wouldn't dare to include and to talk like 10 years ago, now they have become part of our daily lives, and this is already a victory, I think. And of course,
oh, she got frozen.
Oh yeah, me too. I'm gonna download the presentation for the students.
Okay.
So they can
Anna,
visit the links.
can you guys hear us? I think Anna, if you're still there.
Anna has a question.
Yes, hello.
Hi, Anna.
Hi, I would like to ask, do you think that this documentary, or maybe any documentary of this kind, could initiate some substantial change in community, in the long term at least? And is this documentary also projected in schools?
Yes, the documentary is projected in schools. And so when Carol mentioned impact, you know, the films, the documentary films, there's like the 1% and the rest of us, because like many successful artistic movements, the genre has been co-opted, shall we say. And just to be sure, I have uploaded the presentation, students, so please download it so that you can see the rest of the film clips too. So typically, and it's a practice from independent documentary filmmakers, because we historically don't have the marketing money behind us. It's a part of the intention of finding our audience and knowing our audience. But more than that, the philanthropic dollars, the investment are to have discourse and civic discourse and public life around these ideas. So the campaigns are really around aligning the messages of the film with community. And what we know, it's easy to talk to someone when we're kind of the same mind, but the more delicate challenge is how to share this material in the hopes of maybe touching someone's heart that may not be of the mind to care about a community like mine. So that's why we're presenting them with history and facts, and these stories promote empathy. But yeah, there's a lot of planning that goes around what we call either community engagement, or now it's called, or outreach, or today they're calling it impact producing. But underlying those words is the real desire to make a connection. Is the real desire to make a heart connection with someone like you. I believe in fundamental organizing, like really to know you, to understand you, to listen to you. I think first, our job is to listen with our heart and listen with an intent to understand. It's not my intention to scream, and it's not my intention to change your mind, but I do have the authority in my life, and I know that my lived experiences are real, just as the experiences that my community lived that were unjust are also real. Does that kind of make sense, Anna?
Yes, thank you.
And Lena had Lena had a blackout. I was just about to tell them, but
Yeah.
but
I have to go in 3 minutes. I have a meeting at the university.
Okay, so let's wrap it up.
I can take one more question if anyone has a question, but I just want to express my gratitude to you, Elena and Carol, for inviting me, and to the beautiful students who smiled I still have not seen, but I can only imagine that you are so tired from reading that your eyes are like this.
Hopefully next year we will be in Lesbos doing the other program, the more advanced one, and hopefully my students will be observing it.
Okay.
Okay.
Well, please find me on LinkedIn. It's my pleasure to be with you today. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We deeply appreciate it, Naida.
Okay, and remember, Carol, I'll put the PDF in the
to everything you do.
Gracias.
So,
Carol, just a reminder that I uploaded class, can you give me a thumbs up? Did you download the PDF of the presentation?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes,
Okay,
please.
ciao. It's
Okay,
there.
thank you.
Thank you,
for-
Neida.
Ciao.
Bye, Neida. So, here we are. We ran out of time already. Sorry for the blackout. I couldn't help it. And
Yeah.
Carol, thank you so much for sharing your experience. It was very enlightening. And I will share, or if you can send me again whatever you want me to share with my students, I will upload them in the platform we have. And thank you all for your attention, and wish you all the best. Have a nice month, and many happy returns for Easter that we had last week. Greek Easter, Orthodox or not, doesn't matter. Okay, and Carol will talk because we have things doing together. Okay, bye-bye, everybody. Thank you
Bye-bye.
so
Feel
much,
free to reach out to me. I'm typing my email also.
Okay.
But you can reach out to me on LinkedIn as well. And, you know, if you need any help with pitch decks or what have you, maybe Nada and I can put something together to give you some more samples. And hope that we've inspired you a little bit. Keep working on your documentaries. The world needs to hear stories from every corner of the world.
Yeah, that's a new trend. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.